Let's move on now to the Jacksonville Jaguars and our 2023 NFL Draft review. But before we do that, if you have not already, hit that subscribe button and also ring that bell to get notified when we create new content. Ryan and we have a bunch of NFL Draft review and 2023 prediction videos coming up here over the next several months. So it's going to be something that you really want to check out, see what we have to say about the Jaguars. Also provide comments on what you feel the Jags should do this season and also your thoughts on the Jacksonville Jaguars. So if you have not already, hit that subscribe button and also ring that bell to get notified when we create new content. And Ryan, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
The Jaguars had a lot of picks. There's a lot of players that I like that they took. It's not like it was a poor draft overall in general. Especially, I really Harrison. I think that was a good first round pick. Yeah. All the other picks, though, these picks felt like picks of a team that just won the division. They know that they don't have too many needs, but they have a lot of extra picks. So it's like, let's see if we can just get a little bit better in each area. And so, like, we like this player. You know, we like Tank Biggs. Awesome. We like Parker Washington. That's great. Tyler Lacey. You know, all really good picks. It was just and I think that was kind of, if there's an identity to the draft, especially there's identity with the other teams in the AFC South, those videos that we just did, and they should be coming out right about now if you're seeing this with the Jags videos. If I had an identity for their draft, that's kind of the feel that I got. There was just like really good, like good players that I liked.
There was an element of randomness. It feels like to this draft.
Yeah.
And I say that the Anton Harrison pick makes a lot of sense. That's one right about where he was supposed to go into the first round.
Yeah.
And then Cam Robinson gets the PED suspension. Juwaan Taylor moves to the Kansas City Chiefs in free agency. And it's like, okay, so now your starting two tackles are either not coming back or out for the first 6 games. So the Anton Harrison pick, that makes a lot of sense. I wasn't a huge fan of the Brenton Strange pick. I like the player, just I think it's a couple rounds too early, as he is a good receiver, but he doesn't bring too much in the blocking world. And then we kind of talked about the Tank Bigsby thing before, and I like Tank Bigsby. I just think that there was other value that was on the board.
Well, and it's like, if I know I like the Antonio Johnson pick. That being said, though, let's say instead of Brenton Strange, just a couple picks later, they had Sidney Brown, saved from Illinois. Top 2 or 3 safety in this class. I think that they could have taken as well, who could come in. And I know they drafted Andre Cisco and everything, and he's a good safety, but for trying to improve that secondary. Also from Syracuse, we're taking a couple picks after that. So it was just that's where it's just interesting in a tight end class. Of course, now to their defense on that pick, there was that string of like 20 to 30 picks where a bunch of tight ends were coming off the board. So so I will absolutely give them credit there. It's like, hey, if we want a tight end, like this is like the last guy that we like. So if that's what they're happening in that room, I totally get that. But I can also understand what you're saying. I feel the same way a little bit about Tank Bigsby. I like the player, but I think that it was maybe around early, and also it brings in questions then on, and maybe optimism. If he's going to maybe slide into the primary back who mainly lines up in the backfield, like that's his role of lining up in the and Travis Etienne also lines up in the backfield, but then he can also then move out the slot. He can do a lot of other things, kind of be that gadget guy for them. So it brings in a lot of opportunities, but at the same time, I think that it could have been a very interesting opportunity if they went an offensive lineman there. Just about 10 picks later, that's when a lot of the offensive guards, other offensive linemen, they're wanting to protect Trevor Lawrence and also boost this run game. But it's like, it's weird where it's like, I like the player though, you know? So that's where it's interesting.
It's just kind of an odd spot for the player to go. So, and then in the 4th round, they had a crap load of day 3 picks. So Ventrell Miller, really athletic linebacker, but I actually had him at like round 6 or 7. And then Tyler Lacey, sounds a lot like your name actually, but I think that's a good pick. Yasir Abdullah, another good pick there. And then Antonio Johnson, I think, is good value as well. And then I wanted to bring up Parker Washington. I had as a 3rd round pick. He's a fantastic slot option. He runs pretty good routes. He has really good hands. He only had like a 3% drop rate, which was top 5 in this class easily. And so yeah, but then my big problem is they don't address the cornerback position until round 6, where it's like that was outside of tackle. That was probably their biggest need. And they didn't do that till round 6. And so that's kind of how part of what makes me feel like this draft had an element of randomness to it.
Yeah. And it kind of goes back to what I said initially is if that is their mentality of essentially, I guess kind of like what I said is a best player available mentality. And then on a day 3, when you have a bunch of picks, that's when we can start kind of going for needs. If that's what their plan was going into it, I think that they're playing to perfection. And so, but it is to help out in the secondary area. I think there were maybe some opportunities that there were good players that maybe could provide a little bit better value at a different position, such as the Sidney Brown example. Or I'm trying to even see if there was, because I believe they traded second round. DJ Turner was picked. I didn't like that pick nearly as much, but also Tyreek Stevenson was taken around the time where their original pick was at. Cam Smith was also taken at 51. I believe that would have been before their original pick anyway, so maybe he wouldn't have been there. That's just a few names. So it's just interesting kind of what their plan was. All being said, though, it's the Jaguars team as a whole in their unit, they do need to figure on the offensive line with the PED issue now with Cam Robinson. But in general, though, there's still a bunch of talent on this team. Like I saw them the favorite to win the AFC South. I think that this was a good draft. It was a good draft. I think they got talented players here. And so especially like Parker Washington, and I think he can come in. Kind of fits the mold of type of receivers that they like. If you go look at the Zay Jones, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, he kind of just
he's different he's different and blends in all at the same time. He has a much more slot oriented build, whereas a lot of those guys have in and out versatility. And I also think you can use Parker Washington in a similar way to like a Debo role, because he is built honestly more like a running back than an actual wide receiver at 5'11", 215. So let's go ahead and get into our overall grade for this class. So I have this as a B to B plus, and then you have it as a B minus. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on why you had it as a B minus.
So some of this, when I was doing my grades, I wanted to try and make it out like essentially like if there was a range, like just I guess grading to the curve. Essentially, I don't know what that is. So like I have one A plus grade, like as that's the best draft, and then I have a couple of A's, a couple of A minuses, several more B plus Bs. So when Jacksonville's B minus here, I would say it's probably for me in the middle of the pack of the overall draft class. And I say that a lot because there were teams that had really good drafts as well. I feel like there was a lot of teams that actually had really good drafts and very few that had poor drafts. So maybe when it comes to the overall on the average, to me, I thought the Jags had a below average draft compared to how the other teams went. But as I said earlier, it's like they did get good players that I like. I think it was maybe interesting just on the overall scheme fit because I don't know if they're going to be able to provide immediate value just because they're going to be behind players at all. But like they had good depth and maybe they can develop them. So for me, that's why I lean more towards the B minus. I think that there was also some potential miss opportunity to get some guys that could have come in immediately and contributed from day one, especially like areas in the secondary like in day 2. But I mean, that's just my opinion. Leave a comment. I want to hear what your guys' thoughts are, Jags fan, on the draft. And Ryan, I see you have a B to like a B plus range. Why is that?
So I like the Anton Harrison pick, and I like the players that they took. I just think it was a little odd, like where they took them. And then they could have really knocked us out of the park if they had gone Anton Harrison and then gotten a corner in the second round. They had a ton of capital to move around and move up to get a corner, but they, chose not to do it. So that was one of my big gripes with this class. But I do think they had a lot of picks, which bodes in their favor. The draft is a lot like throwing darts, and they got to throw a lot of darts in the draft this year. So I think that helps. I do like the Parker Washington value, and Derek Parrish. I think it brings an interesting level of physicality and an interesting role to this team. So I think that's another interesting one. And so I like what they did. I think it is about average, but since they had so many picks, I gave them maybe a slightly above average grade.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's
but
like it. I could have honestly even maybe in my head for a B to B plus range, just like how you did. So it's
yeah.
like, to me, it's just, if I look at all 32 drafts, there are definitely teams that have worse drafts than there, so I don't like. But then there was, a lot of teams I think who I actually could see the value and the route of or their plan, so to say, in their draft, in their purpose of this draft class. Well, in the Jags, that's not any fault really to the Jags. It's just, it was more. That's I think that's just kind of how I so.
Yeah, and that's, I think the Jags are still the favorite to win the division. I think there's some overlap in some of the players that they drafted, but I think that also means that they drafted good depth, and they'll definitely be able to have more contributors in future seasons. And so I like that aspect of it. But again, they could have gotten a few more contributors now. But let's go ahead. Let's wrap up the Jags draft recap there. Let us know down in the comments what you thought of the draft. Who was your favorite pick? Do you agree with us? Ask us questions down there. And while you're down there, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button and smash that bell so you get notified when Tyler and I create new content. And other than that, we will see you guys next time.